All right, so today I have Alex Fischer. I'll ask Alex to introduce themselves in a little while, but just to continue, because this is a YouTube series that the Vermont Employee Ownership Center is putting through to increase awareness and to educate business owners, the business community on employee ownership. And in this particular segment, we are focusing on increasing awareness of the services that are available to assist worker co-ops or cooperative businesses. So I'm so excited about today and being with Alex. I also am just generally excited. So my name is Lizah Makombore. I am representing the Vermont Employee Ownership Center. So I'll keep on saying VOC, and what I mean by that is Vermont Employee Ownership Center. I am an intern just for the summer. I'm almost done, so my heart is a little bit sore that I'm going back to school. So I'm studying for a PhD. I was going to say postgraduate. It's a PhD in sustainable development, economics, public policy, and governance at the University of Vermont. I'm a fellow of the Gand Institute for the Environment and also a fellow of the Leadership for the Ecozoic. My research interests are, broadly speaking, cooperative economies, solidarity economies, global inequality, ecological crisis, and what all of that how all of that is connected to essential resources. So essential resource allocation, distribution, is where I'm focusing. And when we talk about essential resources, just for those who don't know, that's like, for me, it's food. I'm defining it as food, water, and energy. So I'm really keen on employee ownership broadly and cooperatives, worker co-ops, broadly, because I'm looking at how this is an alternative pathway to the current sort of business system or economic system. So those are my interests. I've laid them out. I will now turn to Alex, and then I also wanted to speak about VOC, but I'll do it after having Alex just introduce themselves, and also a little bit about ABC Consulting. Thanks, Alex. You can take it away.
All right. Hi, I am Alex Fischer. I'm a worker owner with a bookkeeping cooperative, and I live currently in Brattleboro, Vermont, and use they and them pronouns. I've been a worker owner at ABC for about 2 years. ABC was started back in 2010, so has been around for quite some time before me, and has been focusing on sort of providing 3 key services to solidarity economy organizations. So we work both with worker co-ops and other types of organizations that identify as part of the solidarity economy. So we provide day-to-day bookkeeping. We support with getting your finances in order. We do consulting on everything from creating your customized, sort of setup for your books, to your budgeting process, to analyzing your finances, to training you how to do your own bookkeeping, and creating policies and procedures for your organization. And then we've also been recently expanding into workshops and curriculum to support a lot of sort of analyzing and understanding finances for members at all levels of organizations.
Great. Thanks, Alex. That was a very good introduction. There's no doubt that whoever is listening, if they are in like a solidarity economy, like a social enterprise of some sort, they could come to companies such as yours for assistance. I just want you to, I'm going to take a little bit from what you spoke about. If you were to explain, like give a profile of these business owners, these businesses that you assist, like if you to come up with a criteria, who are we talking about? If you can just speak a little bit about that, and then we'll go into other questions about ABC Consulting and also your journey. I'm excited about that, working for a worker co-op business and what that means, so we can learn from that. But just starting off with just generally, if someone was to ask you at a, okay, I was going to say at a bar, but people are going to think I like I like alcohol too much. No, I don't. I do partake, but I don't like it that much. But if you were to meet someone at some bar or party or whatever, and they say, you know, tell me a little bit about this typical sort of not customer or typical collaborator. I don't know what language you really use in this particular sector. So I'm also getting educated. Let's hear from you. If you were to meet me,
I think we usually say clients. So the clients we work with.
Okay, clients. Okay.
So we range from, it's a range. It's not like a very easy to profile work. I think some of the things that folks have in common is they're usually small to medium-sized organizations.
Yes.
Oftentimes, if an organization is big enough that it has, they have their own, you know, CFO, finance manager, finance director. And so we often find it, and especially for bookkeeping work, we're working with smaller organizations or startup organizations. Okay. Our consulting can range on the size because it might be consulting on how to get things set up, how to train someone, or it might be working with, you know, a finance director, a CFO, a finance manager, an executive director on higher level sort of financial management and forecasting and predicting. Most of our organizations are very values aligned. So, you know, solidarity economy, social movement, folks, you know, really doing work towards a more equitable world. So that is a big piece that our clients have in common. And I think those are probably the major things they have in common.
No, I think you got them. Yeah.
Like all the industries.
So no, I think you really described them well. And what I'm getting from you, it's like it's a spectrum from a startup all the way to, you know, sort of a medium to large company. But I think the intersection or what brings them together for them to work with you guys is that they have values aligned mission statements or mandates. So they are making a difference, or they want to make a difference in a way. So their business is just not growth focused. So it's not only about we want to grow without, you know, being conscious about what the business means and why it's in existence. I think that's what I got from your description. And then in terms of what type, it really doesn't matter, LLC, you know, private companies, or it's a mix. But what is the, you know, that tying or the thread that brings them together is that they are in some solidarity sort of economy or cooperative economy. Okay, got you. Is that a good summary? on my part.
Great. Yeah. I would say, the one thing I would add to that is I think we try to think about what's the world we want.
Okay.
How are we right? So our work supports an
Mhm.
organization doing a better job at what it does.
Okay.
That organization is fixing up used bikes,
Mhm.
and they're a for-profit organization, and we're like, yes, we love more bikes,
Yes.
right? We want to see more bikes in the future. Or
Mhm.
it's an organization that is working on housing justice and organizing around tenants' rights. We're like, yes, we love that. We want that, right? So I think a lot of our work is also that when I think about it, it's we support an organization doing their job better.
Mhm.
So what do we want to have more of and to see doing better in the world, right? And so that can look like a lot of things, from meeting basic needs to providing, providing opportunities to folks, to organizing or justice oriented pieces. But we sort of balance the everyday things and the sort of organizing world of things.
Great. And I see where sort of our connection is. It's that piece on equity and equality, and just seeing that the world is what it is because of a certain way of doing business, right? And we are saying perhaps VOC, because I'm representing VOC, I'm very conscious about that. And your organization, we are saying there are other alternative pathways that we need to consider of doing business, and you are supporting those. So that brings us to the next question, which is really around the types of services that you offer. And just before we started this recording, I was saying to Alex, because I'm originally from South Africa, and I was saying, and for those who know, the history of South Africa and even Southern Africa, because I was born in Zimbabwe, is that cooperatives are sort of the way to go and work our own co-ops in the agricultural sector value chain. So you find in Africa, cooperatives are there and they're thriving, but the startup cooperatives, sometimes the survival rate is actually quite low because there's no, I believe we could do better. There is, but we could do better in terms of the services that we offer such types of businesses. So I want to hear from you one or two case studies of a business and what you help them. What exactly did you guys go in and agree with them and help them? How did you assess? I just want to hear the intricate details of maybe a day, not a day. You guys take, I don't know how many months with the customer. What would it entail? Yeah, so if you can get into that a little bit.
Sure. Okay, so one example is there is a worker co-op cafe that we worked with, and this cafe was a mix of like a startup and existing co-op. So it was a cafe and then was bought out by the employees and turned into a worker co-op. So we joined and started supporting them in their beginning stages. So technically they were a startup because they were a new organization. And some of the work that was done to support them, we helped them set up their bookkeeping system. So that meant setting them up with an online software, setting up their chart of accounts, how they're going to organize things, creating policies and procedures for them to follow. So as a co-op, who is going to be in charge of what pieces, what were the roles that were involved, who did what, from entering bills or paying bills to making deposits, counting the register at the end of the day, reporting out to the rest of the team, right? So all of those pieces, we helped them set up what was what were their policies, procedures, and ways of operating. So that way they had some standards to work with. And then also worked with them to train them to be their own bookkeepers. So they decided they wanted to keep their bookkeeping in-house. So we worked with them to train 2 people to do their bookkeeping. That way they could be entering their, sales receipts for the day, entering their bills as they came in, and really being on top of it day to day. And then I think the last thing we did with them was work on how to report out to the rest of their team. So, right, part of like the bookkeeping and finance arc is you want to gather your data. So that's like in the bookkeeping. You want to analyze it. So that is often your budget versus actuals reporting, or somehow saying, so now that we have our data, what happened? What did we do? How did it look? And then how do we report that to the rest of the team? So how does everyone know what they need to know to keep it moving? So that might look like, for a restaurant or cafe, that can look like what items are selling well, what aren't, what are the trends on which days, what is your average ticket price, things like that. Trying to think and we probably worked with them for 6 months or so, fairly regularly. So high touch at the beginning, and then it sort of faded off a bit. So that is one example of like a startup that had a lot of, just a lot of opportunity to come in and support them creating new things. And then a second co-op that I can think of that we worked with is more of a like consulting and design based worker co-op. So less on the sort of production style that like a restaurant or cafe would be. And this co-op has been around for I think almost 2 decades.
Wow.
It's been around for a while. So they're established. They're a team of about 25. And they had recently split how they configured their work into like 2 separate teams. And so some of the work we did was consulting with them on more of that analysis piece. So they had been doing their book. They had an outside bookkeeper. They had a finance committee in their co-op. And so working with the finance committee to sort of rehash some of the ways they were doing things, to understand price points and productivity and where they were making money or losing money on different products and services. And then also a lot on predicting. And so we worked with them a lot on sort of cash flow projection. So how much money they thought they were going to have, were projected to have in the future, and budgeting work. So because they were established and had been around for a while, it was a little bit more of that analysis and planning work that we got to do with them. And then I guess one other thing that has been really fun that we've done is other worker co-ops that are either a little bit newer or established, right? The one thing financially that really stands out that makes co-ops different from other organizations is calculating patronage at the end of the year.
That's good.
So we have often come in, or not often, but once or twice we've worked with an organization to do workshops internally to help them understand their financials specifically. So doing workshops with their info and their numbers to understand different financial reports, what those reports tell you, but then also in preparation for how patronage works and for making that decision. So that has been really fun to be able, as a worker co-op, to work with other worker co-ops on this thing that really makes us different from other organizations, which is right. And so patronage, for folks that don't know, the shorthand of it is instead of calling profits at the end of the year, it's a surplus that is split between the co-op and the worker owners. And so those percentages and amounts get decided upon. How much is going to stay in the organization, how much is going to be allocated to members, to the worker owners, and then of the percent allocated, how much is paid out in cash and how much is saved for the future.
Okay.
There's a few decision points. And so we've had fun coming in and supporting other co-ops on that, as well as regularly reteaching ourselves how to do that. So we also internally run our patronage workshop, annually for ourselves to remember, because it's something we only do once a year.
Wow. And it's just a good segue to the next section,
Yeah.
which is about your journey into the worker co-op. And for me, I find it, you said you're only 2 years, right, with a bookkeeping cooperative. But prior, what type of industry were you in, and how was that transition? So first question is, what is the transition like?
Position wasn't, I think, as stark as some other people's.
Yeah.
I ran my own business for 8 years doing
Okay.
all the exact same things. So I actually
Okay.
worked side by side with ABC for many years.
Oh, got you.
Yeah, we co-facilitated workshops and created curriculum together. I would come in and subcontract on some clients at times, or I would
Okay.
see to do things. So we already had a working relationship, which made it a lot easier for me. But I did run my own, finance, bookkeeping business prior to joining ABC.
So maybe the question is, why did you
why?
why did you then, what motivated you to say, okay, I'm sure you were doing well, like, why would I consider also, like, not joining the movement? I'm trying to look for words, but
I think it was that, though. It was, for me, there are a few factors that motivated me. One is it's really hard to run a business by yourself.
Okay.
So for me,
I like that answer.
It's hard on a lot of levels. Like on an emotional level, I didn't have people that I could go to and ask support and questions on my client work because my clients' information was confidential.
Yeah.
So now I have a team where I can say, hey, can you look at this with me and help me solve it? Because we are a team, and our contracts are our entire co-op and a client. So I can say, hey, Terry, can you come in and look at this with me and help me solve this thing I'm stuck on? Or what would you do in this situation? So that was one thing that was.
So it was really the cooperation, right? Like you knew I have like team, I have other hands, other eyes too. Okay, got you.
Yeah, so that was a big piece. Also, I knew from doing this work for so many years that there was such a need for values aligned finance work. And I was not interested in being anyone's boss. I was not interested in managing people. And so I knew that in order to grow the impact, I would have to not just be myself. Like, right, I need to like grow the number of folks I worked with. And I was just not interested in learning employment law in order to be my own employer. So joining a co-op that is established and already has, employee manuals and a handbook and systems set up and payroll set up and is incorporated, people on the team that are really strong in their HR skills, or at least like that employer management side, was huge for me. I was just really clear with myself that the things I would need to learn to expand a team, I didn't want to learn on my own.
Okay.
And so that was another big piece, was to expand capacity. So now being a part of ABC, hiring on new people isn't something that's falls on me. It falls on either our whole team or parts of our team where that's the strength. Okay. So that is another reason of like, I know the work that is being done is needed in this particular field. Expansion and growth is important. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that on my own. And to be quite honest, it's just, I like working with other people. There's that piece. There is also sort of the ideological piece for me of being someone who didn't want to just like profit for myself. So really, I love the way that we truly are creating wealth for our team and for our community. And so who is a part of our team is a really big deal. And I loved joining ABC because it was, a majority women and non-binary, queer friendly place to work, which for me has been a really really big
Wow.
deal for most of my life, as like an out non-binary person,
Mhm.
especially in finance, to find a place where I was like
Wow.
respected, but also comfortable and safe,
Mm.
not the only one, and things like that. So
Yeah.
joining a team that had a queer friendliness
Mhm.
was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that last part. It's almost making me a bit emotional. I'll tell you why. It made me miss, and this always happens when I talk to Alex. So for those listening, I feel like I'm gonna cry or whatever. But anyway, it made me miss my colleagues. We ended up calling ourselves like a research tribe. So it's like a group of women, and we're working at an institution in South Africa, and we're all like trying to, like advance ourselves in academia. So some are doing masters, PhD, and we just started gathering like naturally. We realized, like you are saying, you realize I can do this by myself, but it's difficult. I can, whatever, do the literature review by myself. But if I can hear someone else and what their journey was, it's going to help me, even improve my own. So we started meeting over lunch, like just like bring our lunch and we start chatting. And then it ended up being like a core team, right? Like, and I remember giving them, tribute in my master's thesis and saying, I want to thank my research tribe, because it becomes more like, from what you are saying, it's also more about realizing I need my people. I need that core for me to continue growing. And like one colleague of mine said, growth is not bad if you're, because imagine if we were not to grow as people, right? Like you stay a teenager, but we need to grow. But there is growth, I believe, like in your case, where you actually multiply because of who you have around you. So the cooperation, that's what really like motivated you. Thank you for sharing
Yeah. And,
that part.
I want to be careful to not speak for other
Mhm.
people on my team, but that's,
Yeah.
that was a big motivating factor
For you,
for me.
yeah.
Also,
That's why I'm saying thank you for
yeah,
sharing. Yeah.
I do want to also add, there was the financial motivation of
True, yeah.
getting a salary and benefits.
And did it actually like improve
Oh,
from?
yeah.
Oh, great.
Absolutely. And that's been amazing. And also just some, benefits that weren't available as a self-employed person. So we
Wow.
provide full healthcare insurance to the team, and then paid time off that is
Wow.
actually taken. So part of what can be hard about running your own business is, sure, you can take off whenever you want, but who's
gonna stay behind? Yeah.
there, right? If your clients need work. And so it can be hard to actually motivate to take the time off. And so being part of a team where I know folks have my back, I know that they can step in while I'm gone, has been incredible. So
So even for your well-being, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like financial well-being, family ties, bonds, social bonds. I like
all of it. And and that is particular to our workplace because of the work that folks put in those first 10 years of really establishing a business, establishing, systems, and working through some really rough stuff at the beginning, as any startup business and organization is going to have. So also, really naming that I got to step into an organization that was, profitable and able to pay a thriving salary, and that wasn't the case for all of its history. So really, a big thank you to everyone that has been there or was there before me that helped set these things up was huge. And all I try to do is just keep that happening. support the organization that is
I like that, Alex. I love that. I'll tell you why. I just feel like if you get to that point of gratitude where you recognize that you cannot be where you are, like I always, any chance I get to like thank you know, my father, my mother, or you know, my ancestors, if I want to get a bit African on you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all of that, right? It has contributed to who I am. So just the gratitude that you are showing is also critical in giving testament to what type of organization this is. And also, I guess for me, for business owners who are going to be listening to this, to actually realize, because I feel like some business owners get very lonely. It gets lonely. They can't get into a vacation, even if they're on vacation. Like I have family, we are on vacation and they're still taking calls. And it's like them leaving for just that 24 hours or 48 hours. The company is going to go down, but it won't. So just to say, you know, there are other ways, right? And other alternatives that you can take, like worker co-op. So thank you so much for sharing that part. I want to dig in a little bit more into that in terms of what were the challenges, if they were there, what and maybe differences. It doesn't even need to be, excuse me, like a specific challenge, but what was like uniquely different that you thought, okay, this I really have to get my head around and understand, because it's also important to show like all the sides of the coin.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's not just smooth.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that is always an ongoing struggle for me is balancing the worker and the owner mentality that we're holding at both times. And what it has actually like taken me some time to realize and come to is how much stronger that owner voice is. And by that, what I mean is like in capitalism, the overwhelming teachings are how to exploit workers and how to generally be okay, not be okay, but like, let me say that again. In capitalism, right, there's a lot about how to exploit workers as the boss, as a manager, how to get more out of folks. And so that voice is often very strong for me of how to, for myself, make myself work harder or more, or I'm not doing a good enough job. And so what does it mean to counter that with a worker-centered voice? So one of the things about ABC that I love is that we are a union. So we are a unionized co-op. And one of the reasons is to, you know, generally be in solidarity with labor and labor organizing, because we as a worker co-op are, you know, a form of creating a dignified workplace. And we want our workers, meaning ourselves, to have certain rights. And what better way than to join a union to make sure our worker voices are organized. And as a flat, like non-hierarchical worker co-op, everyone is eligible for the union. So we don't have managers or supervisors that would be ineligible. But yeah, so that comes out a lot, the sort of worker owner piece, right? When we're in a meeting and there's 8 of us and we're seeing things through different lenses that we all have, right? So I might be more concerned in a meeting one day about making sure I get enough, you know, time off and have a dignified job and not, you know, overworking, where someone else might be more concerned with the profitability.
And productivity.
And so how do we hold both of those together? So that's like a specific conversation, but I think in general, what can be challenging is Well, we're all in charge and no one's in charge, right? So a lot of times with worker co-ops, we talk about how there's no boss. But also I have 8 bosses.
Yes.
But also I have no bosses. And so I think that's a challenge of just learning in our team, but also in myself, where and when are the things that I am going to the team for, and where and when are things that I'm doing on my, like, I can just go forth. And so balancing those pieces of who is in charge, how are we delegating decision making, you know, which also as a co-op doesn't necessarily mean that everybody does everything, because that is not efficient or effective. So what are the places where we do all have input? Where are the places that we delegate, you know? And oftentimes, like any good boundary, it's there and then it's flexible, or you don't know that you crossed it until like I do a thing and someone's like, you should have done that. And I'm like, oh, now I know. I come to the team. Or I come to the team and everyone's like, just go for it. You know, the balancing, I think those pieces is a specific challenge to worker co-ops. The other piece that I think is so interesting is sort of the world of like HR and feedback and supervision, job performance, that kind of stuff is really interesting and challenging to join a co-op. So for me, I was by myself, so I didn't have right, like performance reviews or evals or feedback, except for clients continuing to work with me. And so that's been an interesting transition, and also is tricky when a lot of what's out there is support on how to do that from a management perspective. So how to be a better boss, or how to manage your staff in terms of evals or performance reviews or feedback. And so when we're looking at it at a democratic level, at a peer-to-peer level, there isn't always as much support or guidance on structure and ways to do that. And it gets really challenging when there's major conflict, right? There isn't always some set structures. And of course, conflict comes up, as it should be, because we are many humans working together. So healthy conflict, you know, is there. So those, I think, are some of the things that are a little bit of a challenge inside the co-op.
I love that. When you were talking, I was just thinking of when you spoke about being a unionized co-op. So yesterday I learned about unionized co-ops from another interviewee who I was chatting to. And I was so interested because I have, like, as I'm like coming up with my research questions, it was very clear in my mind, and I don't know if it's also influenced by coming from South Africa, where it's very unionized, and the sector that my research is inquiring in is very unionized, extractive industries. And I was seeing that there's a connection, but I was like, but if I'm like promoting worker-owned businesses, worker co-ops, does it mean the trade unions and the union part, where does it fit in? And I'm seeing, this, and I think you repeating it today is just a reminder to me that it's not a question of one or the other. They can actually work together, though there's a tension, like you've explained it, but it's a good tension, and it's just from what I'm taking from what you're saying, you really need to have courage to navigate the space, that particular space, because it can present itself as conflict, right? Which voice is gonna sit?
Right.
Yeah, which voice is gonna speak more? Am I crossing boundaries when it comes to the HR issues or not? How flexible is flexible? Those questions, which really require to be very conscious, and also courage. I feel like if you are to go into like worker co-ops, be ready, because it's different. It's going to be different. And
Yeah.
you need to be courageous to face it and address it, and not let it, maybe if you're a business owner and you're considering selling your business to your employees who want to form a worker co-op, if that worries, you know, someone, to know that if you know that your employees are into this and they really want to transition the business, then it shouldn't be a concern, as long as there's a will, right? Like that sort of political will. I don't know how to explain it, but if you are going to address the issues, then it's going to be okay. Is that a good sort of
I think
analysis?
so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things with being a unionized workplace are that we first and foremost want to treat our workers well.
Okay.
So that's like regardless of what kind of organization you are. Nonprofits can have unions,
Yeah.
for profits, right? Foundations. And so I think to me that's like a regardless of being a worker co-op, but also how to counter the myth that, you know, because you're a worker co-op doesn't necessarily mean you're treating yourselves well.
True.
You can be a worker co-op that
and really be bad.
that's working more than 40 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
That's putting in. And so how to really acknowledge that oftentimes we can be the ones that are treating ourselves poorly. And so how do we, you know, really acknowledge that just by being a worker co-op by default doesn't mean that you're providing the workplace that you
culture.
There can be a little bit more of that owner mentality of, well, everyone just has to work really hard. Everyone needs to put in extra time right now. Everyone's getting a pay cut because this, that, and the other. And that might be true, but also what does it mean to acknowledge that we want to give an organized voice to the workers?
And I'm sure it's coming from this discussion, but if you remember when we started, when I asked you what motivated you, you wanted to go to a place where well-being was one of, you know, the check boxes. Am I going, I need more time, you know, I need to work for an organization where I'll feel well, right? Yes. So if that, let's just take an example, right? If someone is to like, okay, I've been doing this in your profession, like I've been like whatever, doing bookkeeping and accounting, I've been CPA for whatever number of years, and I've got a good set of clients, I've got my core sort of pipeline of projects, but they're at that point where they are seeing that, okay, I need to, you know, I need to grow. Also financially, if I join up with others who are like-minded, I can multiply myself better. I can get better working conditions, though you can still give yourself, right? And it would really present, and then you go and you work for you join a worker co-op and you're an owner and the worker who's not happy, then we are in trouble. We have problems. Yeah.
And the other piece I'll just add about being what's cool about union co-ops is both forming a union as a co-op can often be easier, right? Like you usually do not have an anti-union campaign in your co-op against you, which allows then for creating infrastructure for other types of businesses in your industry to organize into unions. So there is an example of, I think, cafe organizing, where there was a cafe that was a worker co-op. They also unionized, and it made it easier for other cafes in that state to unionize because some of that infrastructure was there. So there's ways that as co-ops we can support union organizing by way of, you know, partaking in and bolstering that infrastructure.
Great.
Yeah, just throw that out there.
Wow, Alex, I like this chat of ours. I'm learning so much.
And I just learned about that example recently. I for the first year was like, why are we a union? I don't understand. And then have been learning more and more about
Wow. It's like I'm getting immersed. So this summer I've been doing this internship, right? I promise you from like day one, it's like I'm getting immersed in this and I'm learning. I always learn every day. So right at the end, I want to touch on something that is drew me to you initially, which is the social justice piece of sort of bookkeeping and accounting, transparency in worker co-ops or the solidarity economy in general. I think this would apply for like all your clients, what that is, and just to educate some business owners out there, what that work for you means, what it is, and maybe you can give an example as well, just to make it way clear. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of what we found in the work that we do is that money is a source of power, and decisions around money are ways that organizations manage their own resources, right? So in an organization, you have a lot of resources. You have time, you have people's work time and how you allocate that. You have volunteer time, perhaps, if you're like a nonprofit or a base building organization. You also have money as a resource, and a major resource to manage and to allocate. And so the ways that we make decisions as a team about how we manage and or allocate the resource of money is not historically been accessible or engaging an entire team, especially across a lot of identities related to class, to race, to gender, to ability ability and citizenship, language, right? So what we have found is a lot of organizations still have one person that does the finances, and there's a meeting that's like, oh, we're going to talk about salaries, and someone's like, hey, can we get a raise? And everyone turns to look at the one person that does finance, and if they say no, then that's the end, right? And so what we're really encouraging organizations to do is to really work with the team to make sure everyone has an understanding of how their finances work, to be able to meaningfully participate in decision making, so that way that power is actually shared. So specifically in co-ops, we talk about, right, a co-op is one member, one vote, one member, one share, meaning that it's a democratically run organization. We all have a say.
Yeah.
And so what does it mean when you give your say to someone else in a decision-making moment? Or what does it mean when you haven't been invested in to participate in that decision, right? So with finances, especially in the state of like racialized capitalism that we're in, a lot of communities have been explicitly divested from learning how to manage money. And so it's not any one person. It's not you're bad at math, or you're not good with money, or you aren't smart enough. It's, were you raised as a girl, and in early education we're told that you weren't good at math, and so you have internalized stay away from math related fields, which could include things like business management, finance,
budgeting,
right? Budgeting, all of those things. Or have you grown up being told that you're never going to have enough money? And so, right, your experience with money in class means that you haven't been invested in to learn how to budget and manage money and engage with it. It's always been, right, something that has been for other people to do. And so there's ways that as co-ops, where are we responsible for training ourselves how to do the job of running a business? I think about it similarly to like, okay, one of our job expectations is that we are peer supports for each other. So back to that kind of like HR piece. In our co-op, we support each other. So we go to trainings on how to be good, peer supports, talk about feedback, talk about conflict and supporting each other on the team. Similarly, we need to be good at and be skilled at managing the organization's money. So how are we investing in building that skill
Wow.
across our team? And really acknowledging that it's a skill that many have been kept out of. And that especially when we think about who is deeply impacted by racialized capitalism, how are we recentering those communities and those folks in being able to manage and make decisions around an organization's finances?
Wow.
So really what we love is like everyone should be at a level to be able to participate.
To understand and participate. Yeah, like it's a whole issue with financial literacy. And but I think I wanted you to give like maybe an example of some work, but I can probe you further. So recently, I also here at the VOC, we had to do some sort of values-based budgeting. And one of my colleagues was like really wanting us to learn that. And there's something that they said that has stuck with me, how, you know, like trial balance. To me, when you say trial balance, I would automatically see a table with the description, the debit and credit, and then at the end, I automatically start to see how in accounting, whatever 101, we will try and make the debits a balance with the credits, and you have forgotten some receipt or check stub, and you know, it just and their point was, do we always have to represent sort of the trial balance, the monthly whatever trial balance that way? We could actually do it in another way, which perhaps will not trigger those debits, credits, and tables. Maybe I can relate it better if it's a story, because I grew up with oral tradition and storytelling. So that would make sense to me if maybe the business, whatever financials are presented that way. It's gonna stick with me, and I'm gonna take it up because one of my sisters is a CPA, and say, how can some of these, and it just reminds me of financial analysis, whatever, you know, where you get this thick annual financial statement. It's like tables and numbers. That's all you're seeing, right? And
well, one of the things that I talk about with clients sometimes is one of the most important pieces can be sharing some right? You do all of this work, you're doing all of your bookkeeping, you're budgeting, you're making this plan. It takes so much time, and then you run your reports to see like, how are we doing? And the answer is great. Your whole finance report, right? Your whole finance report,
or even more
we're
than
doing great.
You
know, and sometimes that's what's wild, is you can put all of this work in, and really what the team might need to know is, remember that plan we made? How are we doing compared to that plan? Oh, we're doing great.
Yeah.
Or it might be we're doing terribly. Here's why. And now we have a lot more detail. But there's this interesting moment for me that I always sort of second guess myself when I'm like, I don't need to say a lot. Everything's fine. Because all of that work has been put in ahead of time by folks. So we don't need 15 pages of numbers to say from the target, here was our goal, meeting our goal, good job.
I understand that. And I think for me, having worked on a USAID project in South Africa, it was called South Africa International Business Linkages. I'm not plugging for it because it's done now. But I remember we always were encouraged to tell the story, and it's like something that my then, whatever manager, supervisor would always say, we need to tell the good stories, tell the story, And I think for them, you know, or even the bed story, but tell the story so that someone can understand. Yeah.
I think about it similarly to other fields like geology or wildlife tracking. Right? You can hang out with a geologist who can look at a landscape and say, oh, okay, so there was like an earthquake and then there was glacier activity, right? Or they could be like, well, the striations of this, that, and the other, or they could tell the story as they're interpreting it. Same, right? I think about friends that do a lot of ecological work and know how to track, you know, understand animal tracks, and can not just say it's this animal, this, but okay, it looks like something was swooping down and they were running and hiding and went this way and then jumped, right?
And that's the part that gets me excited with my research. Now I'm telling Alex about my research. let me keep focused. But anyway, it's a part of it has to do with indigenous knowledges. Like I feel like if someone can tell you a story that I know that a deer has been here because of you know these marks and these leaves the way they you know they've been chewed on, or you know it makes more sense. And one of my friends was telling me how they in Kenya they predict weather through when it's a bit gross, but anyway they look at the intestines of their animals, then they will be able to know that an El Nino, this is a year of an El Nino. This promise you, it's like, what?
Wow.
Those types of stories to me is like, now you're talking. So if we could do that with, with money.
Yeah. How do we tell the stories of the insides of the organizations?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alex. I have had fun. Now I know why I was so looking forward to chatting with you. But thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much, Liza. This was great. I love this project. I love it for Vermont and beyond. Because what are state borders, but also. So yeah, at ABC, feel free to get in touch with us. Our website is bookkeeping.coop, or you can Google A Bookkeeping Cooperative and you'll find us. As of now, we are taking on clients for bookkeeping, for consulting, and then we do workshops both inside your organization, or you can send members of your organization to public workshops. And we love seeing people at that. That's one of the things I spend a lot of time on, is creating curriculum for and facilitating finance workshops that are fun and engaging, and help people break down some of the skills needed to manage your organization.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
I'll chat to you via email. Cheers.